November 1971. The United States of America. The air along the Pacific Northwest was cold, quiet, and calm. Life went on as usual: work, dinner, the evening news. But on this very month, above the clouds of Washington State, one man carried out one of the most mysterious crimes in aviation history. It would become the only unsolved airplane hijacking in the history of the FBI. His name? Dan Cooper, but the world would remember him as D.B. Cooper. November 24th, Portland International Airport, Oregon. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short 30-minute trip to Seattle. Nothing unusual. Only 36 passengers, 6 crew members, and a small Boeing 727 waiting quietly on the runway. At 2 p.m., a man in his mid-40s approached the ticket counter. Black suit, white shirt, dark tie. He carried a briefcase and a calm expression. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle. Dan Cooper, the name on the ticket. No questions asked. At 2:50 p.m., the plane took off. Everything was normal. Passengers read newspapers, drank coffee, and chatted softly. But on seat 18E at the rear of the cabin, a quiet man lit a cigarette and ordered bourbon with soda. Then he passed a folded note to the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. She smiled politely and slipped the note into her pocket, assuming it was just another phone number. But the man leaned closer and said in a calm voice, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." She froze. He opened his briefcase slightly. Inside were red sticks and wires, looking exactly like dynamite. The note read, "I want $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. Deliver them when we land in Seattle. No tricks, or I'll do it." The message was passed to the cockpit. Captain William Scott immediately contacted air traffic control. Within minutes, the FBI and local authorities were informed. They agreed to meet his demands. Prepare the money, prepare the parachutes, keep everyone safe. To buy time, the plane began circling above Seattle. At 5:45 p.m., the aircraft landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The runway lights were dimmed. Police cars kept their distance. The demands were ready: $200,000 in $20 bills, carefully numbered, and 4 parachutes, 2 main and 2 reserve. Cooper remained calm, smoking and watching through the window. He gave specific orders: no police near the plane, lights low, and the fuel truck must refill the aircraft immediately. Then he released all 36 passengers. They walked out, unharmed, confused, and terrified. Only 4 crew members stayed aboard: the captain, first officer, flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant. Once the money and parachutes were safely delivered, Cooper checked each item carefully. He seemed satisfied. Then he gave new instructions. "We're flying to Mexico City. Minimum altitude 10,000 feet, speed 170 knots, keep the landing gear down halfway, cabin lights off." It was clear. He knew exactly what he was doing. These were the perfect conditions for a parachute jump. At 7:40 p.m., the Boeing 727 lifted off again, heading south toward Mexico. Outside, it was dark and stormy. Rain lashed against the fuselage. Thunder rolled across the sky. Inside the cabin, Cooper was calm, methodical. He tied the cash into a bag, fastened a parachute, and walked to the rear stairway. The crew watched the cabin pressure gauge drop. He opened the rear door. The loud roar of wind filled the plane. At 8:13 p.m., the cockpit instruments registered a sudden jolt. The crew later said it felt like someone had left the plane. D.B. Cooper had jumped into the cold, black night, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, over dense forest and pouring rain. The crew saw nothing, only darkness below. The plane eventually landed safely in Reno, but Cooper was gone. FBI agents rushed to the scene. They collected fingerprints, his empty bourbon glass, his cigarette butts, everything he had touched. But none of it matched any known record. No real name, no background, no trace. The investigation began that night. For days, search teams combed the thick forests of Oregon and Washington. Helicopters, dogs, soldiers. They searched every valley, every riverbed. But there was nothing. No parachute, no money, no body. As if D.B. Cooper had vanished into thin air. The case stunned the nation. One man hijacked a commercial plane, demanded $200,000, jumped out, and disappeared forever. No one was hurt. No one knew who he was. He left behind only a legend. To this day, that night remains one of the most mysterious chapters in American history. A man boarded a plane with a briefcase and left the world with a mystery that still haunts the sky. The storm faded, but the mystery was only beginning. After the jolt at 8:13 p.m., the Boeing 727 kept flying through the dark skies. When it finally landed in Reno, Nevada, the cabin was silent. The rear stairway was open, the money gone, and so was the man known as D.B. Cooper. The FBI launched one of the largest investigations in American history. 3 main questions guided them. Where did Cooper land? Who was he? And did he survive? Based on radar and wind reports, investigators believe he jumped over the thick forests near the Lewis River Valley, on the border of Washington and Oregon. It was a rough area, cold, mountainous, filled with tall trees and rivers. Survival chances in that storm were slim, but without a body, no one could be sure. Over the next few weeks, hundreds of soldiers, police, and volunteers scoured the area. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Search dogs followed every scent, and divers combed through icy waters. They found nothing. No parachute, no clothes, no sign of Cooper. The legend had begun. Newspapers called him the gentleman hijacker, the phantom of the sky, and even America's Robin Hood. He hadn't hurt anyone. He was polite, calm, even courteous, and yet he had pulled off the most daring aerial escape in history. The FBI, however, saw something different. A man with precise training. He had chosen the perfect aircraft. The Boeing 727 was one of the few planes with a rear staircase that could be lowered mid-flight. He knew about cabin pressure, altitude, and parachute design. To the agents, that meant one thing: military or aviation experience. Over the next year, the FBI questioned hundreds of suspects, ex-soldiers, pilots, engineers. Every name led to a dead end. Every clue faded. Some men even confessed to being D.B. Cooper, but none of their stories fit the evidence. At the time, technology was limited. DNA testing didn't exist. Fingerprints from Cooper's seat, his whiskey glass, and his cigarettes offered nothing useful. It was as if the man had planned not just his jump, but his disappearance. Years passed. The case turned into folklore. Still, the FBI never gave up. Then, in 1978, a small discovery reignited hope. A hunter in the same region found a flight manual for a Boeing 727 lying in the woods. It matched the type of plane Cooper had hijacked. Perhaps a clue, perhaps a ghost. But the real breakthrough came 2 years later, 1980. On the banks of the Columbia River, a young boy playing in the sand found 3 weathered bundles of $20 bills. When the serial numbers were checked, they matched the very same bills given to D.B. Cooper 9 years earlier. Total amount, $5,800. It was the first physical evidence since the night of the hijacking. But it only deepened the mystery. If the money ended up in the river, what happened to the rest? Did Cooper die in the jump, or did he survive and intentionally leave that money behind as a message? The 1980s brought theories, books, and wild confessions. Some claimed Cooper was a Vietnam veteran. Others said he was a former Boeing engineer who knew every detail of the aircraft. And a few believed he was still alive, living quietly under a new identity. The FBI followed every lead. They even examined parachute fragments, decayed cloth, and metal buckles found in nearby forests. None matched Cooper's equipment. In 2001, DNA was finally tested from a tie Cooper had left on his seat. It showed traces of rare metallic particles, suggesting he may have worked in a factory or aerospace industry. But the DNA itself? Still inconclusive. By 2016, after 45 years of searching, the FBI finally closed the case. Their official statement read, "Despite exhaustive investigation, no definitive conclusions can be drawn. The identity of D.B. Cooper remains unknown." But to this day, people refuse to let go. Online forums, YouTube channels, and podcasts still debate every detail. Where did he land? Did he die in the forest? Or did he walk away that night, vanishing into history? Eyewitnesses claim to have seen someone like him in Nevada, in Canada, and even in South America. Always middle-aged, always calm, always alone. But none were ever confirmed. D.B. Cooper became more than a man. He became a myth, the only person to hijack a plane in the U.S., take the money, and never be caught. He left no blood, no victims, no answers. Only questions. Only silence. And maybe, somewhere between the trees and the clouds, the echo of a parachute still hangs in the wind.